Hello everyone, it's Janki and welcome back to my channel, and today I'll be doing my June wrap up. I read a total of 7 books in June, and all these books were a part of the readathon that I was participating in, and all of these are fantasies. And also I had an amazing reading month in terms of the quality, because there was no book that I gave less than 3.5 stars. All were above it. Great fantasies. And without any further ado, let's get into these books. Starting off from the very first book that I read in June, it was We Free the Stars by Hafsa Faisal. It was the second and the final book in the Sands of Arabia duology. Not going much into the book, we just follow right from where we left in the first book. We follow that whole group of characters coming back to Arabia after the hunt, and the book takes off from that point of time. Regarding my reading experience, I again had the same level of emotions in me as I had when I was reading the first book. Like, I remember when I was reading the first book, it was few of those books that made me tear up within the first few pages of the books, which is really rare, because to form connections that early, it's really difficult. And the second book was no different. It was full of so many emotions. We see the relationships between this huge cast. So I give this book 5 stars, and with it, it's very clear that I loved it. But one thing that I thought was missing, not really missing, because I remember very well the epilogue of the first book, and I thought that the story could have taken a little different path. Like, I had this theory in my mind that, okay, this will happen. That whole storyline that I created in my mind, nothing of that happened in the second book. So I was a little disappointed because my storyline did not get executed, which is really silly of me. But never mind, the book was amazing, and 5 stars. Coming on to the next book, we have Bone Crier's Moon by Catherine Purdy. This is a young adult fantasy again, and this is the first book in the Grace Bones trilogy. Is it a trilogy? I don't really know. I think it's a trilogy. So I read this first book. I really hadn't formed my mind about this book because I didn't know much going into this book. And as I began reading this book, the magic system, the trope of all-female magical group, then female friendships, enemies to lovers, kind of somewhere, all these got blended in so well in this book. I mean, I did not expect it. So in this book we follow basically 3 characters. It's Sabine, Elise, and Bastian. So Sabine and Elise are part of this magical group that is known as Bone Criers by common people. So these Bone Criers have this duty of ferrying the dead to the heaven or to the hell, depending upon their deeds. The magic system in this book is really very different, because these Bone Criers, during their lifetime, they go on these hunts wherein they need to kill 3 animals at different points of time, or different periods of their life. They need to hunt these animals, and after hunting it, they extract 1 bone from each animal and use it as a bracelet or a necklace or a crown or whatever they want to. And that bone provides them the abilities, the powers of those animals. For instance, strong hearing power or greater visibility and speed and things like that. So it's really cool. Like, reading it, it's really cool. And so we have this girl named Elise, who is the daughter of the matron, the head of this magical group, and now she's as ambitious to become the next matron as her mother is. Beginning of the book, she is about to get her 3rd Grace Bone, after which she'll be promoted to the next step to become the Bone Crier. So this is the storyline of Elise. Then secondly, we have Sabine. So Sabine is this loyal friend of Elise, and Sabine is exactly contrary to Elise's ambitious nature because she doesn't like killing and hunting animals. So when she was extremely forced to kill one animal, she just killed a hedgehog or very small animal and took a very small part of that animal. These bone criers, for them to become bone criers, they need to fulfill this rite of passage, and within that rite of passage they need to kill one man, and that one man is actually their soulmates. So they have this period of 1 year within which they need to kill that person, or else they both will die after that period. So there's this concept of fated lovers also here. And so here comes a storyline of Bastien. So Bastien is hell-bent on revenge after he accidentally witnesses a bone crier taking life of his father for that same rite of passage. And so from that moment onwards, he's like preparing that one day he'll find one of that bone crier, any bone crier will do, and he'll kill her. So that is a very extensive premise that I gave you all. So yes, that's how the book starts, and it fares on very good. I gave it a 4.5 stars. Next we have Foundry Site by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is a adult fantasy, and let me tell you guys, before I even begin telling how I felt about this book is the perfect book if you are looking for something, not even something, if you're looking for a magic system that is comprehensive and well incorporated into the storyline. This is the book for you. So, Foundry Site. Before I begin telling about the main character, I'll tell you about the magic system in here. So, the magic system is really very unique, and the uniqueness sometimes is a miss if not understood properly. So the author does a very great job at making the readers understand how the magic works. Magic in the city is through something called scribing. So scribing is basically writing sigils. So sigils are these special alphabets, writing sigils on a certain object, and by scribing on that object, you convince the object to disobey its reality. So in short, in simpler words, you convince that object to behave as it's not supposed to behave. If you still didn't get the idea of what I'm trying to say, I'll give a very small example. For example, if I have a piece of wood in my hand and I'm scribing it, and it translates into or it convinces the wood to behave like a metal, say iron. So that wood will no longer be a wood and it will act as a iron. So you see how that works. So this is the most basic example that I gave you, but the level to which this book takes this simple scribing thing and turns it into such a good magic system. Really amazing to see how this magic system unfolds in front of you. It's really good to read. So yes, and that was the magic system that I'm raving about right now. But as for our main storyline, we have this protagonist named Senchia, and Senchia is a gifted thief because she has the ability of reading scribed objects. So Senchia, whenever she touches any scribed object, she gets to know the whole history of that object, as in what it's made of, its composition, what people touched it, what went through it, the whole history, the whole information related to that scribed object, and that thing makes her a very gifted or a very successful thief, because she's able to escape and make her way through in something very easily through that. I gave it a 4.5 stars. 0.5 because I think I could have gotten a little more of the characters. Now, the first book that I read was The Wrath in the Dawn by Renée Edehi. This is again a YA fantasy. So, The Wrath in the Dawn, it basically follows two characters. One is Shahrazad. So Shahrazad is, it's enemies to lovers first of all. So Shahrazad is married off to the king, and now she plans to kill him. And as to why she wants to kill this king is because this king takes on new brides, and after one night they all are dead. He orders them being killed, and so one of the bride that was killed was Shahrazad's dearest friend. So now she's going there as his bride to take her revenge. And so now we see how these enemies to lovers thing works. There's a very little of magic in this first book, if I have to say anything about magic system at all. It's a very good beginner's book also. I really liked this character of Shahrazad. She's too cool. I give this a 4 stars. It was a very fun read. Next book that I have is The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. This is an adult fantasy. There is so much goodness filled in this compact book. It's so good. I mean, we've before anything else, I'll just tell you what it's about. So we follow this guy named Linus Baker. Linus Baker works for the department in charge for magical youth. So he's a caseworker, so he's given assignments to go overlook how these orphanages are working. So orphanages are the places where these magical kids reside who have nowhere else to go. And these magical kids are so very different from one another. One day, the management gives him this highly classified assignment of going to this Marcia's island, and going to this orphanage and review its working. And why it's classified is because this orphanage has really very diverse kind of magical kids, and it's not going there. So yes, he goes there and he has to send for a month. He goes there for a month and he has to send weekly reports about the workings of the orphanage. And oh my god, like thinking about what I read in this book, I'm getting so overwhelmed. It's so good. And so when he goes there, he's met with so much skepticism because everyone knows why he's there, and if there's a little miss on their part, they may have this orphanage shut down for them. And the kids, as well as their master, the one who takes care of them, they will do anything for this orphanage to not get closed down. They love each other immensely. The master of this orphanage can go to any lengths to protect these children, and it's just so good to read it. It's such a happy bear hug moment. There are so many bear hug moments in this book. I've really never read a happy book like this happy book, and if I want to read a happy book, I want to read this kind of happy books, or not at all, because it's so good. And these children, my god, all of these children are so unique and they're so hilarious. And this found family trope in this book is such a perfection. I mean, just read it. This is such a simple book. Like, it straight up hits the point. There's no beating around the bush kind of thing. It's so simply written. Like, even a teen could pick it up and read it. It's so easy to go through. So, absolutely recommend 5 stars for me. The 6th book that I read this month was my all-time favorite now, The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wong. So, The Sword of Kaigen is a Japanese-inspired standalone fantasy and a very, very well-executed, written and conceptualized fantasy. So, we follow mainly two characters. The character of Misaki is, although a mother of 4 children, but she's still somewhere in her conscious stuck up in her previous years of her life when she was a really good fighter and a warrior. So when she was in school, she went to this foreign school wherein there were no gender biases and something like girls and boys both were considered worthy of doing all kinds of job. So when she returns back to her hometown after completing her school, she's married off to this this powerful family of sports persons, fighters. They are called Theonites in this book. So the village she's married into, it's still traditional in its outlook. So the women of the household is just meant to raise the children, give birth to them, raise them. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Look after the house. And this thing is like, it did not sit very well with Misaki, and we see various instances of her past life and then her present life and how she's doing in her life. Now coming on to Memuru. Memuru is this 14-year-old child of Misaki, and Memuru, as other men of the house like his father, he is trained to become an exceptional fighter, because the men of this household and also different households of this village, they are considered as the best fighters in the whole empire, the empire they live in. And so they are trained from a very young age. And the kind of magic system that this book has, it's great, because we have elemental magic in this book. And this household, the household Mamoru belongs to, it is a master in ice magic. So they basically control the fluidity of water. They can turn it into vapor, make it solidify into it ice, and make weapons or fight the enemies through that elemental magic. And it's so good. The combat, the fighting scenes, they are phenomenal. I am a person that doesn't really care about action scenes or fighting scenes when it comes to book. Like, I'll read it, but I can't really visualize it as it's described in the book. But trust me, when I read this book, every scene was so clearly formed in my mind. I was left speechless. And this book is so emotional.
Man, oh man. The Sword of Kaigen. That book.
I'm having goosebumps really thinking of this book. Like, I read this book as an ebook, and this is the very first book that I want to buy after reading a book, because I just want to have it on my shelf, because it's a book that I see myself rereading somewhere in the future. I want to reread it. I want to annotate this book. I have never annotated any of my books. I just find it so useless. But this is the book that I want to annotate. Like, you see how much I love this book. It's obviously a 5 stars. If I could give it a 6 out of 5, I'll give it. It's so good. Go read this book. Go read this book. And now coming to our last book. It's The Bridge Kingdom by Daniel L. Jensen. And this is a book again. It wasn't on my TBR. I just found it on some booktube video and I picked it up. It has a lot of political intrigue in it. So we basically follow these two kingdoms, Meridrina and Ithikena. They both are having this peacetime. So earlier they both were rivals, and when the treaty was signed, there was peacetime, and after 15 years it was agreed that Ithikena would take a bride from Meridrina. So the king of Meridrina from that point of time is training all his daughters to become spies, lethal spies. So as it happens, our main character Lara is this king of the daughter of Meridrina, who is married off to the king of Ithikena, and she goes there as a spy. She needs to break down the defenses of this kingdom, because this kingdom Ithikena, it guards its secrets very strongly. It has this bridge, and this bridge is the source of all the trade, like merchants and or caravans, everything goes through that bridge. and that bridge is the major source of income for Itigina, but they also charge other kingdoms to travel through it, and Meridona wants to take over that bridge. Lara is going there to find out the secrets of this bridge, and the story follows. So there's a lot of political intrigue in this book, and there's obviously enemies to lovers in this book, because I seem to pick only those books because I really love those books. I love, like, that's a trope I can handle if it's done well, because I really don't like it when it's not done well, as in The Shadows Between Us. So yes, this book was nothing very different, but it was good nonetheless. So I gave it a 3.5 stars. I had a pretty good time reading it. With that, I completed all the 7 books in the month of June, and I've already started July, and as to update you all guys, in July I've started 2 books. That was all for this video. I think I babbled on somewhere, so just ignore me whenever you want, but do watch the video. So if you like the video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe and comment, and thank you all for watching. Meet you next time.